Welcome to Write On, a show for readers and writers about authors. I'm your host, Linda Wasylciw, author and writing coach. As L.M. Wasylciw, I've published a collection of adult fiction and nonfiction. As Professor Scry, I've written books for young readers. This is the quote for today. "Dear God," she prayed, "let me be something every minute of every hour of my life. Let me be gay, let me be sad, let me be cold, let me be warm, let me be hungry, have too much to eat. Let me be ragged or well-dressed. Let me be sincere, be deceitful. Let me be truthful, let me be a liar. Let me be honorable, and let me be sin. Only let me be something every blessed minute. And when I sleep, let me dream all the time, so that not one little piece of living is ever lost." While you ponder who wrote that, I'm going to talk about polishing your prose by fleshing your story without padding. A writer's first drafts are often a tad short. Don't panic. It's only the first draft, the bare bones of your story. The trick is adding substance, making the scene stronger by fleshing out your story. Review your work word by word, sentence by sentence, and examine the language used. Get rid of those cliches that manage to sneak in when you aren't looking. Make your descriptions dance on the page. Clarity should always be the first goal. Write a story that your reader can understand. Combine your personal voice and your writer's style. Impact the reader, setting tone, atmosphere, and culture. Make your work sparkle. The key is knowing how to flesh out a story by adding depth and texture, adding an emotional punch that brings people and places to life. You can add fleshing if your story is too short by adding a plot twist. Introduce a new character, one that adds to the story. Craft a new dimension to your main character, or reveal something new. Analyze the way you describe people, places, and events. Then think, are you being too economical with words? Describe your characters by adding memories, identities, and secrets. The famous adage for fiction writers is to show, don't tell. Consider the sight, smell, sound, texture, and taste. Give your book life. Every author knows what it feels like to experience emotions, anger, frustration, happiness, and fear. All you have to do is put it in writing. Show your character's thoughts and actions which lead to emotions. When you reach that emotional scene, slow it down and write your character's every thought. Share the actions. Put yourself in the scenes. Bare your soul and feel the emotions. Describe the sweaty brow, that increased pulse rate, or that misstep. Send your reader's heart racing. And remember that readers expect certain things: a timeline they can follow, a sense of situation, narrative, a world that feels real. Author Liz Braswell wrote, "Belle, go. If I was your age, I wouldn't have hesitated for a moment. You will always come back here, and I will always be here, and we will have those talks we need. Everyone should have a journey, and everyone should also have a home too. Go out into the world for adventure, come home for love. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. Our guest for today is author Pearl Gregor. Welcome to Write On, Pearl.
Good afternoon or good evening. How are you today?
Very well. Thank you for joining us. Please tell us about the books that you've written.
Well, my books, there's 3 books, and the first book is I, the Woman Planted the Tree. It is the story of my healing of clinical depression through dreams, meditation, and journaling. It is a story of a deep spiritual transformation and the power of dreams. The title comes from Enheduanna, the first woman writer who wrote the myth of Inanna many, many, many centuries before the birth of Christ. The second book is called Authoring Self. That book invites you to come along with me on a deep and terrifying journey to the underworld to reclaim my feminine soul and recognize the power of the Great Mother, dormant in the underworld and in exile for thousands of years. This work became my book cover, created during a creative art project with Sandra Salzillo in Connecticut many years ago. The third book is the trilogy is The Cauldron of the Feminine, the process of initiation into the mysteries of the sacred feminine. The cover of this book comes from a dream, October 27th, 2017. In my dream, a voice speaks in the night, and for the very first time in many months, I am jolted upright. The dream is a vivid, swirling fractal of every possible green. I am the sacred feminine. Within the swirling fractal are 3 sharpened pencils. It became 3 books.
How long have you been writing, Pearl?
Depends on what kind of writing you're talking about. I began writing my actual books in 2014. I began keeping a journal of my dreams in December of 1988.
Oh my.
So I had many journals that became my books.
Right. So you used your journals for your writing.
Very much used my journals for my writing. My healing of clinical depression was nothing short of a miracle. And so I kept track of it, thank heaven, because who would remember all of that detail? Mm-hmm. There's probably 400 different dreams in my 3 books. So to keep all of that in your memory would be, I'm thinking, pretty much impossible. So when I began to write, actually, it's a story. Everything is a story, right? A voice spoke to me on March 3rd, 1990, as I drove down the road to do a social studies workshop. I was an education consultant working for Alberta Education at that time. And the voice said, "Write dreams along the way." I kind of looked behind me. There was nothing back there. I kept on driving, and the voice said, "Write dreams along the way." I kept on driving. The voice said, "Write dreams along the way." I stopped my car. I got out. I walked around, shook my head a few times, got back in, and the voice said, "Write dreams along the way." All right already. So it took me a very long time. That was in 1990. It took till 2014 before I sat down in a chair to actually write dreams along the way. I wrote a dissertation between 1990 and 2008. So I was writing, but I wasn't writing this kind of work.
Right. So what would you say is the biggest surprise or something that you discovered when you wrote Cauldron of the Feminine?
What did I discover? I discovered that the journey to the deep feminine, the descent to the underworld, is filled with destruction, dismemberment. I was stripped in a dream, hung from a peg. I was beheaded. Those are the kinds of dreams that go along with this deep spiritual transformation. I am not the same person that I was in 1988. Remember, in 1988, I was suffering from clinical depression under psychiatric care. So, well, actually, that was 1984. So it's a great long story to get to 1988. But what I discovered in writing Cauldron of the Feminine was a lot of, I was reading Sylvia Pereira in The Descent to the Goddess. And it's called Descent to the Goddess, Initiation of Women. I don't know a whole lot of other folks who have made that descent to the underworld. I had no idea what I was doing, let's be honest. I had read a little book from Jess Lair that said, I don't know where I'm going, but I sure ain't lost. That became my mantra. I, for some reason, had a great amount of trust. And that trust came from the very first dream I had. In that first dream, in December of 1988, just before that dream, a family member had been concerned about me and had sent me a box of books. And in that box of books was a book called A Christian Approach to Dream Work. And so I read the book. It said I could ask for a dream. And it said I could remember a dream if I asked to remember a dream. So I did both. I remembered the dream. That dream propelled the next, well, still propels my life to some degree. But I could read the dream to you if you'd like to hear it, because I think it's important for people to realize. I hear a lot of dreams are weird, and I'm going, well, they're not weird when you begin to understand symbolism. Dreams are, there's a book called God's Forgotten Language, and there's much written by Carl Jung about the language of dreams, and many, many, many other people as well. That very first dream that occurred was I'm on the 7th floor in the Harley Court building where my office is, downtown Edmonton. If I just stop there, right there, and say to you, the office is my intellect. It is symbolic of where we kind of live our lives. Think about how we live our lives. We don't live in the heart as much as we should. We don't live in the emotion, perhaps as much as we could. We live in the intellect because it's prized. A good intellect is considered to be very, very important in our world. In fact, we're often told, don't be emotional. I had to learn to be emotional. So that dream, I'm on the 7th floor in the Harley Court building, and I go out into the hallway. I get in an elevator. And there's a lot of women in that elevator. I don't know any of them. The elevator begins to fall. The women all begin to scream. And I begin to pray, Jesus, make it safe. Eventually, after falling and falling and falling, the elevator lands in chicken feathers or lamb's wool. So I didn't know that in 1988. That was the very first dream I had. I had had nightmares since the age of 9. And I'm talking nightmares where you wake up screaming. You wake up, there was blood running down my hands from clenching my fingers, clenching so tight, so I would not fall. That dream I fell, but I landed. So I call the dream the landing. And that dream propelled my journey for many, many, many years.
That's lovely. It shows where you have gotten your strength from. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do as a dream worker?
As a dream worker, I work with individual clients. I work with groups. Before COVID, there's BC and AC. I'm hoping for after COVID pretty soon. I would have dream workshops in my sunroom. I have a very beautiful place on a farm outside of Edmonton. And in the summertime, people would come, local people would come, or people from Edmonton or St. Albert. We would do a dream workshop where I would introduce people to dreams. We would work with their dreams, work with the expression using art, using dance, movement. Movement is very, very important in dream work because our bodies have been kind of left out of our lives in many ways. They're very restricted. We have rules around all of these kinds of things. Well, in dream work, there's not a lot of rules. So I do that kind of work in a dream workshop, and then I work with individual people where they bring their dreams on Zoom, and we talk about and help them go through and understand the symbolism of the dreams. Now, understanding symbolism is a lot of study.
Would you share with us one question that you've never been asked in all the interviews that you've had?
That's a really good question because that takes me to the very heart of the healing of clinical depression. That experience was February 7th, 1989. It's in my book, it's detailed in my books, but it's something I often think people don't see it, or they don't, perhaps they read it, but it doesn't seem to go deep inside them. When it does, it's very powerful. That experience, I was in my friend's living room. There were two other women with me. We were meditating. I had learned to meditate in April 1988. This is now February 1989. What is that, 6 months later? I have been praying, meditating, journaling, and dreaming. Only 2 dreams, but a lot of meditation. In that moment, my inner voice began to speak to me. And I was shown, my whole body turned blue, Linda. Like it's almost, it's the ineffable. You cannot explain it. The words that we write, the words that we speak don't completely do or tell the story. But if you can imagine looking through and seeing through your own body, a transparent, the whole room lit up like a beautiful white light. It was transcendent. When you read about it in Jungian terms in the Red Book, he calls those transcendent moments. It took me a long time to understand that. But my whole body, I was crying, there was tears running down my face, and the memory of an early childhood molestation returned to me. I was pre-verbal. I was at a church picnic in my carriage. So that healing moment, that all went away. And I'm murmuring to myself, that poor man. And my inner voice tells me I have been given the gift of compassion and forgiveness. Think of the gift of forgiveness. And I never felt a moment bitterness or animosity about all those years of depression from age 9 to 43. Now tell me if that's a miracle.
Yes, it might be.
I think it's got to be a miracle. In any case, I'm sticking to my story. It's a miracle. It's a miracle enough for me.
And Pearl, where are your books available?
Those, I, the Woman Planted the Tree, Authoring Self, Cauldron of the Feminine, and recently joined by A Journey Through Dreams, Your Journal, and as it says there, available on Amazon.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Pearl is going to read from her book. Welcome back. Pearl will now read from I, the Woman, Planted the Tree, a journey through dreams to the feminine from her Dreams Along the Way series. Go ahead, Pearl.
I'm reading from I, the Woman, Planted the Tree. Chapter 1, Last Ditch Effort. The search of reason ends at the shore of the known. On the immense expanse beyond it, only the sense of the ineffable can glide. It alone knows the route to that which is remote from experience and understanding. Neither of them is amphibious. Reason cannot go beyond the shore, and the sense of the ineffable is out of place where we measure and where we weigh. Abraham Heschel. Strange, here I thought I was alive when I had merely fallen asleep in life's waiting room. By my early 40s, depression and I were mortal enemies. The fight had been long and arduous, beginning when I was a young child, deepening when I was a teenager. Now it was reaching dangerous and brutal depths. At Easter 1984, my husband Bill received the sacrament of confirmation. We went that Holy Week to a mission, preached by a visiting priest. My parents were home from their winter in Phoenix, which meant Mom, bless her heart, was handling my kitchen. Bill loved the mission. I loved the music. That last evening, Holy Thursday, I went to confession. For the very last time in my life, I might add. I swear that night my soul shrank. When I confessed to the sin of despair, depression, the priest snorted, told me to get myself to a good doctor and to say 10 Hail Marys for penance. A good doctor? I had been to doctors for 27 years by then. Medical doctors, general practitioners, psychologists, and psychiatrists. My soul flew away. I found her years later, dehydrated and dried up. It would take a lot of coaxing, a lot of love, and many tears to bring her home. There were some fairly serious events that spring. At Bill's insistence, I went once more to doctors. I saw the psychiatrist whose diagnosis was clinical depression. The prescription medication did calm me enough to sleep a few hours. My energy was frenetic. When the voices still spoke, regardless of the medication, I went back. Are you telling anyone? Like your school board, he asked. No, I'm not. I may be mentally ill. I'm not stupid. He recommended a new drug. You will have to take 2 weeks with no medication, so your system is cleared. Then we can start your new prescription. Pharmaceuticals were the only intervention. He made no mention of what I would later recognize as the beginnings of splits in myself. This professional did not calm my fears of mental instability and craziness. I hadn't yet learned the true art of self-lying, nor had I learned about the assault begun on the feminine millennia earlier. Think Assyria. Think 2nd century BCE. Think the myth of Inanna. Think centuries earlier. I remember mostly that spring, the icy feeling shivering up and down my body. The hair on my arms stood up. I was a nervous wreck, but I did go to teach. I always went to teach. That was my absolute requirement. Staying home brought too much time to think. Work was my savior. Somewhere during that time between medications, I approached my school guidance counselor. I think I need a disability leave. How do you think the board and the superintendent will handle that? Give me a bit of time to think about it, he said. Our counselor was an amazing man. Kind, genuine, compassionate. Came back to my office a few hours later. No, he said sadly, if you take a leave, you will never return to administration in this district. I didn't take a leave. I don't remember what day it was that spring when my grade 9 class, social studies class, ended and a small group of students approached my desk. Can we talk to you? Sure, what do you need? Oh, it's not us. It's you, Mrs. Gregor. You usually make sense. Today, you made no sense at all. We think you're sick, and we think you should go home. They scurried out. I went home. I stayed at home until the new medication did its work. By June 1985, when blackouts once more threatened and I was unsuccessful in hiding a particular incident, our school secretary insisted I see a doctor. That July, I wore a Holter heart monitor, for a week. The doctors were trying to find out the source of the continuous palpitations and the blackouts. Nothing wrong with my heart. I've lost count of the number of times my heart was tested. I don't think medical tests show heart chakra issues. Desperate for inner peace, I went with a close friend, Verna, to a Sunday night meditation in April 1988. By the time I got to dream work later in 1988, I was too desperate to give a damn what anybody thought. I would have danced with the devil if she promised healing. I came to dreams through a box of books, sent to me by a worried family member. One book said dreams bring healing. It also said I could ask for a dream. I did. And after years and years of screaming nightmares, I dreamed my first dream, December 11th. I call that dream the landing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pearl. Thank you very much for sharing your spiritual journey and personal experiences. I have one final question for you before you leave. What is the one piece of advice that you'd like to share with fellow writers?
Write what you know. I think we've all heard that many times, but in my case, that really was, it was a joy to write. It was a joy and a very deep transformative experience, as writing, I think, often is. You start, you end the process, quite a different person than when you began. But writing what you know is, I think, for me, that's the most profound advice I can give.
Thank you, Pearl. It's been a pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you very much, Linda.
Now to reveal who wrote today's quote. Dear God, she prayed, let me be something every minute of every hour of my life. Let me be gay. Let me be sad. Let me be cold. Let me be warm. Let me be hungry, have too much to eat. Let me be ragged or well-dressed. Let me be sincere, be deceitful. Let me be truthful. Let me be a liar. Let me be honorable and let me sin. Only let me be something every blessed minute. And when I sleep, let me dream all the time, so that not one little piece of living is ever lost. That was written by Betty Smith in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. The next time you pick up a pen and paper and are struggling to find the right words, remember to simply write. Write when you have a direction. Write when you have no idea where it's going. Write when you want everyone to see. Write when you want to keep it to yourself. Above all, write for you. Too many writers write solely what they think their readers want to hear. Write truth, write your truth. Whenever a great piece of work is written, the world takes notice. Keep on writing, even when the world takes longer than you like. Thank you for joining us today.